Hi, hello, my name is Gabiio. So, I'm not gonna be too long here. Last week I was looking at my drawings and I realized that I only use this Procreate all the time. And Procreate is really great, don't get me wrong. I just wanted to see what else was going on. So I re-downloaded Paint Tool Sci because Paint Tool Sci was my first love in digital art. And I had lost my license and I finally got one back. So I was ready to go. So for these drawings, just to put into perspective, they are all my OCs. So from Something Astral, so I'm gonna draw in order Astrid, Twitch, Abigail, Ethan, and Iris, and I'm going to describe them a little bit if you want to know them. But I'm mostly focusing on the programs I'm using, which are going to be in order again: Procreate, Krita, Paint Tool Sci, Photoshop, and Adobe Fresco. So all the doodles were made in Procreate because it is my main tool all the time. It's the one I use, and I wanted more to focus on the rendering than the doodling because the iPad is so cool to doodle on the fly. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So, the first one I did was Procreate because I wanted to set setting stone. So, first of all, for the character, so you know who it is Astrid. I drew her a couple of times yet. She is the main character of my story. Just a normal girl being a normal person. Yeah, her design is probably the one. Most of these designs are really anchored. The only one that is not is Twitch, but I'll take a little bit about him. He's the next one. So as for Procreate, Procreate is one of the most intuitive art program I've ever seen. I really like Procreate for what it does because it really seems to strive for the easiest solutions to all problems, if that makes sense. It is really fun to use just because there's like nothing that complicated about Procreate. It just feels fun to use. They have a lot of brushes that are a little useless because a lot of them are kind of like stems, but I usually can use them to add texture onto stuff, so it works generally pretty well. And the brushes I mainly use are either brushes I found on the internet or brushes that I slightly modified. I'm really bad at creating brushes, so for all of these I literally just used the brushes that worked for me. And I also hate researching for brushes because I feel like it is so time consuming to find a brush that serves any purpose. One of the main caveats I have towards Procreate is I really like to that is in my little silly brain of mine. I really hate pixels on my heart. I hate on my personal art to see pixels because then I get super self-conscious about my lines because I'm a self-conscious artist, whatever. So I like using really big canvases. And one of the biggest problems I have with Procreate is that I always hit the layer limit. Like 9 times out of 10, the layer limit is like 40 to 60, and I hit that frequently in the more paintings. Like I remember Ursula from a couple of weeks ago. I hit the maximum like every single time for the past hour I needed to merge layers together to be able to work. But I also use arguably too many layers. So is that my fault? Probably. The layering works really well on Procreate. Super easy to use. There's a maximum if you use too big, but it's fine. I really like also by doing this challenge I realized it was not like this on all programs that I got. I was really sad about it. In Procreate, if you want to change the mode of the layer, you just scroll through and Procreate is gonna automatically show you what each of them are. Like you don't need to click on them, you can scroll through and see them all. And this makes it so easy to find the right mode to subtract. So this is a really good point. If you like to add a lot of shading layers, Procreate is really strong on that, at least in my opinion. The color wheels are also really good. Procreate has like 4 different color picking methods, plus palettes that are really easy to integrate. You can take a picture and put it into Procreate to make an automatic palette. So it is really easy. All in all, Procreate is really like my favorite program now. I have another one that is really close second, but so far this is like probably my favorite. And that's why I use it all the time, but this is not a competition. This is just me trying new things for fun. The pros of Procreate are incredible interface that is super easy to use, great layer system, like very great layer system, great color system. The cons are sometimes not enough layers for my taste. Also, Procreate has an animation tool that is incredible. I love it a lot. That's not the time to do it, but yeah, the animation on Procreate is incredible. So here's a little sheet I've made of pros and cons, and let's move on to the second one. Okay, so part 2 is gonna be Krita. So just quickly, I'm gonna get it out of the way. This is my character Twitch. In the story, he is a friend of Abigail, and I'm the only normal person there, I guess. The design is not set in stone because I have a lot of difficulty designing him specifically because I don't know, he's like hard to figure out. For him, I went with the program called Krita, and it's an open source program that is completely free. I learned of its existence because of one of my college friends that when I was complaining about Photoshop, which I'm gonna get in a bit, they were like, oh, Krita is really good and it's free and it works well. So I tried it out. I didn't like it the first time, but I also didn't try enough. I am very picky on art. The thing with art programs, in my opinion, is that if it takes me more time to personalize to my needs than it takes me to draw, it's not gonna work well for me. I don't have the time span and the patience to make it work for me. But yeah, so I had it and I tried it. So first of all, Krita is slightly unresponsive, which is just bad for me because I'm really quick. I like to think quick, I draw quick, I go, and sometimes I don't know if it's a stabilizer that I could not stop, but sometimes the strokes were like kind of slow to get to. But I also really like the line art it gave, so I'm not that complaining about it. The second problem I had with Krita was the color picking tool, which was fine. See, right now I'm googling my next problem, which is the clipping masks. I googled it, I tried to look, I asked friends. Krita's clipping masks seem to be only working in groups, and you can only have one per group, or at least that's how I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I was able to make this one work, which it really sucks because for one coloring layer I can use up to 12 clipping masks because I really like to add a lot of shade and a lot of dimension to my colors. As for the brushes, they were generally fine. They were slightly annoying. But they weren't that bad. What I was talking about the coloring tool is that it is the triangle, the Photoshop triangle, and I really hate it. It's just not fun to use, at least for me. I prefer the square. That's the one I usually use. Then for the shading, as you can see here, I tried to... It was kind of hard. Twitch is a very tired character, so I tried to give him under eye bags, but then they look just like sick. Twitch is gonna look very sick actually in this drawing, which is fine. But yeah, the color selection was not the best. And I don't want to say that Krita is bad because it is free. Like, that is not the problem. I've seen free programs that are pretty good. And I don't think that's Krita's main problem is being free at all. I think Krita's main problem is unresponsive UI. It is probably because they are trying to make it easier to use for everybody, but since I'm used to other programs, it feels bad. And it also seems to kind of want to rival Photoshop And since I already don't like Photoshop, I have a lot of difficulty with this one. And yeah, so I'm still really proud of the final pictures, don't get me wrong. And I don't think Krita is that bad of a program at all. I just think it is not specifically to my needs, and it's probably one of those programs that I would have to work really, really hard to figure out how to make it like for me. And I, again, don't have that kind of energy, unfortunately. But the positive of Krita are, first of all, it is completely free. I'm pretty sure you can download it on the website. I might link it in the bio just so we know. And it is pretty responsive, and it has a lot of stuff. Nothing is locked behind a money paywall. Stuff can be hard to find and not super intuitive, but it's not bad per se. So the positives are free, full program, somewhat easy to use, and the cons are complicated UI, lack of easy clipping masks, and too close to Photoshop for my taste. Alright, so the third one is Abigail. Abigail is my favorite, not my favorite, but one of my favorite characters for my story. She's a villain. She has power over love, and she's also a sweetheart, and she's a complicated character, and she's fun to draw. So, and to draw her, what better to use than Paint Tool Sai? Paint Tool Sai is a $60, I believe, Canadian. I'm pretty sure it's about $60 program, which is Japanese, I'm pretty sure. But it is so immaculate. There's something about Paint Tool Sai that I've never met anywhere else, not even Procreate. There is a level of responsiveness from that program that is so good. I already, as I said earlier, I already used Paint Tool Sai. Paint Tool Sai was the first program I had, because it is great. It was, I believe, originally used for comics, but a lot of people use it for illustrations, and I am completely fine with it. Also, Paint Tool Sai is one of the easiest places to make brushes. I did not this time around because of lack of time, but I remember that in the day on my old license I had a lot of paint brushes. I used to watch a lot of Kiwi Bird's old tutorials. If you were on Tumblr in those spheres that I was in a couple of years back, you probably know who I'm talking about. If not, I'm still gonna link their video somewhere. And yeah, they were super helpful with Paint Tool Sai and how to make it responsive. Specifically for painting, I love their painting style. And yeah, so I know that Paint Tool Sai has a pretty easy brush setting UI, but I have not used it in a while, so I couldn't say if it still holds up to my personal taste. So yeah, because I also think color picking is simple. A lot more simple than it can be on other platforms. But I think that's just because I grew up on it. I don't know. Because I still to this day always use the square color selector because I think it is the best. So is it because does Paint Tool Sai have a really good one? Or do I just really like it and try to find it everywhere else? I couldn't say. I am very biased in this, guys. I'm trying my best to explain my thought process. The brushes, I talked a lot about the brushes creation, but the already there brushes are pretty easy also to use. I mostly use the version 1 brushes because they're the one I remember using from back in the day. The pen is super simple to use, a lot of pen pressure sensitivity, super great to use. So yeah, it is super great. The marker, I remember not liking it when I was younger, but this time around the marker works fantastically to shade. Super fun, super responsive. The blending modes are so fun. That's also the thing that I use a lot to paint on Paint Tool Sai, because painting with, like, I had an acrylic brush and painting with it feels fantastic. Also, the blending tool. I hate Photoshop's blending tool, and a lot of programs are trying to imitate it. Even Procreate's the smudging tool is not good. This one, Paint Tool Size smudging tool is the only smudging tools that feels like that. It is so responsive and so good, actually, that I had trouble using it this time around. I don't know what exactly they do. I think it's because they use a lot of blur, but like with the direction you use your brush in. So it is kind of hard. It was hard this time around because it is so responsive and so good to smudge things. Because like Procreate and Photoshop have a tendency to more like take what you have on the paper and smudge it around, whereas this one really blurs it together, which is a lot more fun to me, at least. I prefer it. Yeah, so I don't know what else I can add for Paint Tool Sai. I think it was clear enough that this is just like personally one of my favorite art program ever. Look at that blending, guys. But yeah, it is one of my favorite programs ever. I think it works fantastically. So obviously the pros are very responsive UI, very good brushes creation. Very intuitive. It is one of the most intuitive. Like, if you want to start on a program, I highly recommend Paint Tool Sai, just because it is so intuitive and so fun. And then the cons are probably, and I don't know if that's a real con or just me having a hard time, but it feels like every time I touch this program, I kind of want to go super sketchy with it, which, you know. But that's probably because it is so responsive. So is it a con? Is it a pro? You know. So let's move on to the Adobe family. So I've already talked about Photoshop a bunch, and it's finally the time to talk about Photoshop Reveal. First of all, I drew Ethan in Photoshop, which I'm so sad about because Ethan is like my favorite character to draw. But I still like the rendering. Don't worry too much. So Ethan is Astrid's best friend. He's super cool, super nice, very sarcastic, but very nice to the touch. I really like my OCs. I'm sorry, I'm talking about my OCs, but this is my video. I can do what I want. But yeah, Photoshop. Oh, Photoshop. Photoshop is not a drawing program, guys. Let's just get this over with. Photoshop can work for drawing. It is not a drawing program, and I will die on this hill. Photoshop brushes are so bad. That's not true, actually. The Photoshop brushes are really good to paint. Like without line art, I really like the soft round and soft square. They're really good to paint. Actually, I love painting in Photoshop, which is weird, right? I hate Photoshop, but I love painting in it. Probably something there, but yeah, painting in Photoshop feels super easy, super breezy, and super like fun. But when it's like illustrations and line art, it is really not fun. And I think one of the main problems of that is the brushes. You have to find brushes, and usually they come in a pack of brushes, and then you need to search in your pack of brushes, and there are so many, and it is so complicated, so convoluted, so not fun. Then the color selection is fine. I don't have a problem with it. I color picked a lot of colors because it feels like fine. The layers are obviously incredible because they're not made for drawing. They're made for pictures and retouching. But they are great. Legitimately, the layering is great, and some of the tools are fine. But yeah, generally, I always had difficulty with Photoshop because when I wanted to start drawing, my parents were like, oh, we'll find you Photoshop. I think my dad had a license. And it's so unfun. Like, as you can see, I have so much difficulty like shading and adding stuff because the putting color is fine, but then blending it doesn't look good. Like, this final picture looks fine, but it looks like a sketch and not a final drawing. And I don't know what I could have done differently because it is the exact same process. I did it in the same amount of time as the others. So it feels weird, I guess. Photoshop is really not a program for me specifically, and Photoshop always is like my reference for a program that doesn't work well to draw for me. Not saying that you cannot like Photoshop. I know a lot of people like Photoshop. I know a lot of YouTubers like Photoshop, and it is completely good. Photoshop works well for some things, not so well for others, and I feel like it doesn't work well for me specifically. So yeah, the pros of Photoshop are the incredible layer system, the fine color picking. At least I have the square color picker. I think some people have the triangle, which I hate, but I have the square and I don't know why. So square color picking, and some of the tools are good, and it is really a good program to retouch pictures. As for the cons now, first of all, the price. I have this program because I have my Creative Cloud for school. That's the only reason why I have Photoshop. I would not pay a penny to get Photoshop because I don't like it, but I have it, so I can sometimes use it for class. The cons are the very bad UI, not intuitive at all, and the bad brushes selection and the way it doesn't work well for me. Yeah, for the price and the next one are in the same. So just to put in perspective, Photoshop and Fresco, which is the next one, which is also by Adobe, are, I believe, both $12.99 a month American. A month. It's a monthly subscription, or $60 a month for the entire Adobe package. I have it on sale because I am a student and I have it for school, but it's still incredibly expensive for how little I like it. So Photoshop can be good. If people tell you that you need Photoshop, though, they probably don't know what they're talking about, because the only people I know that really love Photoshop spent hours modifying it to their personal needs. So the last one is Fresco, the last Adobe baby. Fresco was dropped for the iPad to rival Procreate. It was basically the only reason it existed, but I believe, anyway, I'm not sure, but it dropped after Procreate, so that's what I think it was trying to do. But I have to commend Fresco on its live brushes, and I had Fresco since I have the Creative Cloud because I have access to it, but I don't use it because I never cared to try. But the live brushes are so good. They are so lifelike, and the technology is really good. So I wanted to put it to the test. Here I'm drawing our Iris, which is Astrid's other best friend, and yeah, she's a sweet little girl, and I love her a lot. Little girl, she's like a young adult, but you know, she's a sweet gal. The first problem I had with Fresco while trying to do this is that Fresco is very, like, it feels like they took less place than Procreate on the UI, but it still feels super cluttered, if that makes sense. Things are kind of hard to find too, which I found hard to deal with, because sometimes you're really hard to look for stuff. Like the dry layer, I had a lot of difficulty. Every time I wanted to use it, I had to look like 3 minutes to find it. I also am very hard time concentrating, but that's another problem. The color picking was fine. It's in a weird location where to pick the color, but it is not a bad color system. The pixel brushes are fine. Most of them are Photoshop brushes, so I already don't love them, but they're not as bad as they could be. But this program is really made for the live brushes. So for this piece, I used the live brushes to shade mainly. So you can see me use them slightly. Oh, the splatter brush for the watercolor made incredible freckles. Very lifelike, really cool. And the other one I used to like try to shade, and it gave a like nice look to the picture, but it was kind of hard to deal with because you had to be really light or it would just like look like a solid block of color. So maybe it's just me that is not used enough with the live brushes yet. But all in all, Fresco was a lot better than I expected it to be. but not the best. Also, I had a lot of problem with color filling. Like when you're bucketing color into it, there's always a weird line around it, like a white border. Shouldn't happen, Adobe, but okay. And yeah, as you can see, I'm gonna use like the light brushes mostly to do the background. Yeah, like this. Look at this. Yeah, it looks really, really cool. So yeah, Adobe Fresco, really good light brushes, very fine responsiveness, and it's on the iPad. Con, the price, again, too pricey for what it is. Procreate is $16 to keep forever. This one is $13 a month. And I don't like the UI personally, and I think some of the brushes, like pixel brushes, are not very good. But anyway, here's the montage. So thank you for watching. This was not a competition, but I think we can all agree that for my personal experience, Procreate and Sci are at the very top and Photoshop is at the very bottom. This was really fun. I think it's a fun kind of exercise to like try new stuff out, and art is art, and it's fun to go around everywhere. So all my social medias are going to be around the screen and in the description. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.